I think Russell Wilson is trying to figure out how to move on in a classy way.
A source told me that the Seahawks management is not happy with Russell Wilson and his camp for taking this to the media. You wonder if Russ and the Seahawks are going to be able to coexist.
There's a belief in some league circles that eventually Russell Wilson will play for another team.
Smells like, I don't know, a guy that kind of sort of has 1 foot out the door or kind of wants out.
Is that what you think it smells like?
I think it smells a lot like that.
Welcome to this latest podcast. Rob Staton and Robbie Williams with you, and we're going to talk about Russell Wilson. You know, we're only a couple of weeks into the official off-season now, and it feels like we have something different to talk about every week, and now it's Russell Wilson's future. And this is a topic that we touched on in December and got into and anticipated. We said that really the philosophical differences meant that the playoffs was big for Seattle, that if it didn't go according to plan, then the Seahawks could have an issue because Wilson wants to do one thing and Carr wants to do another. And when they lost in the wild card round, you know, it was easy to see what was potentially coming around the corner. Robbie, I've got an awful lot to say on this, and I'd want to give you an opportunity to get the first word in. So what are your thoughts? We've heard Brandon Marshall saying Wilson wants out. We've had Jason Leconfora saying that Wilson's not happy about the O-line and that he could be traded this year, and he's listed a whole bunch of teams. You've got Mike Florio chiming in now. No doubt Colin Coward would be, but he's very poorly in hospital, I think. So he's not been able to do that. What is your thoughts on what is going on with Wilson and the Seahawks?
Yeah, I mean, my first initial gut reaction when I heard, Russ on the Dan Patrick show was, what does the O-line think? Like, what are they thinking right now when they're hearing this? And, it's weird to hear Russell Wilson throw teammates under the bus because it just seems something that's not really Russ does, I mean, he's kind of plays that good role. He seems maybe he's transitioning a little bit over to that, maybe to, that superstar diva kind of role. And I don't know, man. Like, I mean, one aspect he's right. Like the O-line has not been good for a while, and they were better this year. I know that, and and I know there's PFF put out some statistics about how Russ was, 17 of his 40 sacks this year were on him because he scrambled around too much or held onto the ball too much, and so there's that aspect of it. So I mean, there's a lot of different things. And, I went through a couple of like emotional moments where I'm like, well, if you want better O-line, then take a pay cut, like give us money back. Let us go get a better O-line. And, but then at the same time, it just doesn't seem like it. It feels like every year it seems like there's something with Russ. Like last year, it's, we need superstars, and, he wanted Greg Olsen, and how did that work out? The year before that is like, we have to sign me to a contract extension by this date, and giving it like a timeline, and just he's playing this role. And now this year, he wants more say and more control. And I don't know how really that's going to how well that will play out, especially with like, if last year you wanted Greg Olsen, you said that was a superstar you wanted, didn't really pan out, and we ended up having to go pay the guy $8 million or something like that to get him to come here. So yeah, I don't know, there's a lot. I have a lot of thoughts as well. I'll just stop right there for now and let you kind of chime in, but yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay, strap yourself in because I've got a lot to say. This is a story, by the way, that there is no reason for the media to create anything on this story. And I've seen this a lot, that people are saying, oh, they're trying to create something that isn't there, and they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill with this. Listen, this is serious. The media don't need any stories right now. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl on Sunday for the 7th time, and then he got hammered on a boat and threw a Super Bowl trophy across to another boat. Okay? You've got Patrick Mahomes having surgery, and where does he go from here? And he was critical of his O-line as well after that Super Bowl, by the way. You've got what happens with the Chiefs. Andy Reid's son has created a real issue for them in what he did before the Super Bowl, the week of the Super Bowl. That's a big storyline. You've got Deshaun Watson and his future. You've got Carson Wentz and his future. You've got two quarterbacks in Stafford and Goff have already been traded. You've got talk of the Raiders wanting a trade for somebody. You've got a draft, okay? There is absolutely no reason for the media to shoehorn the day after the Super Bowl and Tom Brady getting his 7th trophy, a Russell Wilson storyline. It's not interesting. It's not interesting enough to dominate the news agenda the day after the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. The reason that this is in the news agenda is because Russell Wilson wants it in the news agenda. And it's a very, very serious story that is worth paying attention to. There's a lot of media out there. Well, not a lot. There's a couple of media people who have been a little bit condescending. and saying he's not going to be traded and there's nothing this and it's listen, just pipe down. We don't need to hear it right now. Okay, this is a serious story and it's worth analyzing rather than just dismissing this idea that Wilson could be traded. Let's talk about how it's got to this point, because that seems like the most important thing. And if there's any way to rescue this, rather than just dismissing this as a non-story, because I'll tell you now, if the Seahawks dismiss this as a non-story, they're going to get caught with the pants around their ankles. So it's something that they need to address and be very, very serious about. Personally, I think that Brandon Marshall spelled it out on whatever his program's called, First Things First. There's so many of these shows with the word first involved. Brandon Marshall said, Russell Wilson wants out. That's what he said. Bluntly, clearly, plainly. And I think he's right. I think Russell Wilson wants to play for somebody else, another coach, another team. And here's why I think that. I think one of the reasons is watching that Super Bowl where he's watched Tom Brady win his 7th and he sees Brady throwing touchdowns to Gronkowski and Antonio Brown. Two people that Brady said, I want, and the Buccaneers delivered. And Brady's there playing with a fantastic O-line, great running backs, great receivers all over the board, great tight ends, a complementary defense. And Russell Wilson thinks, why haven't I got that? That's the first thing. The second thing is perhaps even more important, and it's the kind of thing we were talking about a few months ago, Robbie. If people remember the story from Mike Florio, which was never disputed before the season started, that Russell Wilson issued the Seahawks an ultimatum. Let me cook, or you'll be baking a farewell cake. That is what Florio said his source told him. And they let him cook for 8 or 9 weeks. And then they said, no, that's enough of that after 2 bad games. And now it sounds like he's looking for a new kitchen. Because Russell Wilson was carrying this team for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. The Seahawks were fielding a festering disgrace of a defense. And the only reason they got to 5-0 is because of Russell Wilson. And his reward for that was at the first sign of danger, we're not doing what you want to do anymore, Russell. We're doing what Pete Carroll wants to do. And I think that pissed him off. And I think what you are seeing now is the reaction to that. And he's had to wait till this point. He was never going to do this during the season, of course. But we said it in December, Robbie. Was it week 16? That the only way to salvage the only way to avoid any drama with this now is for Pete to prove that he was right by winning a Super Bowl or getting to a Super Bowl or even seriously contending for a Super Bowl. Otherwise, Wilson's going to go, why the hell did we go away from what we were doing when I wanted to do? We've done what you wanted to do, and look where it got us. And look what it got them. An absolute embarrassing defeat in the wild card round to a division rival. And they were one and done in the playoffs, and they've won 1 playoff game in 4 years. And I think Russell Wilson is just fed up. I don't think he trusts Pete Carroll anymore. I don't think he wants to run Pete Carroll's offense. I don't think if Pete Carroll says to him, well, do what you want to do, Russell, that he trusts that at the first sign of trouble, Pete won't just say, no, we're going back to what I want to do now because we're struggling. Russell Wilson wants autonomy on the offense. He wants to do what he wants. He wants to be able to say, I want that guy, and then they bring him in. And people can say, well, he wanted Greg Olsen. They got Greg Olsen. Okay, fair enough. That didn't work out. All right. But he's looking at other players like Mahomes and Brady who are saying, I want these guys, and they're getting their guys, and their guys are working out. And he's going to look at those, and he's going to use those examples. And Greg Olsen in isolation is not enough of a counter, I'm afraid, to quench the thirst that Wilson is looking for here. So this to me is Pete Carroll versus Russell Wilson. And that's not to say that they hate each other's guts or whatever, anything like that. But it's one guy with one philosophy and another guy with another philosophy. And they ain't meshing. And it's clear that the Shane Waldron appointment has not brought them together and that they're working hand in hand. And I don't know where it goes from here, Robbie, because quite frankly, I don't personally believe, and I'll explain why in a moment, I'm going to let you back in. I don't personally believe the Seahawks can satisfy Russell Wilson this offseason. And if anybody thinks that Russell is just going to go through 2021 and go, well, I'll see how it goes for another year. He's been seeing how it's been going for years now. The reason he's talking the way he's talking now is because he's had enough. It's had enough now, not in 12 months' time. He's had enough now. And he's not going to waste the 33rd year of his life going into a situation where he doesn't think he can achieve what he wants to achieve. The man talks about legacy practically every other sentence. He wants to win Super Bowls like Brady. He wants to be MVP candidates. He wants to set statistical records. He wants to be one of the best that has ever played. And I don't think he thinks he can achieve that in Seattle anymore. And he wants to go. And I think that's just the situation that we're at. And I think it's high time we just all bloody well embrace it, Robbie. And the sooner we do, the sooner we can come up with what the solution is, whether that's to deal him or to find the way to keep him and to make him change his mind. But him changing his mind might mean Pete's got to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it right there. You 100% agree. Is like, where did it break down? And I think really what it is he was MVP candidate through half the season, first half of the season. And then you're right. He had a couple bad games. Pete dialed it back. And I think you're right. It pissed him off. And he wants to, like, I don't know this other than just my personal opinion. I feel like that he wants to win an MVP. He wants that category. He didn't get any votes this year, probably because of everything that happened, and he hadn't received one before. And I think that kind of makes him mad. And he wants to be considered that top tier quarterback. So going out and winning an MVP, and like you said on the Dan Patrick show, the first thing he said was legacy, and then he goes, oh yeah, and it's about the team. But he said legacy first, and I think that's a key point for me, is that the first thing he said was, it's about your legacy, and I think it's about his legacy, and that's why I don't think he's going to take a pay cut to help the team out. Like, I don't think he's going to be like, okay, yeah, here, or shift some money around or whatever. It's not take an actual pay cut, but like shift some money around so you can bring an offensive lineman. I don't think he's going to do that. And I think what the reality is you're right. I mean, this is a situation that has escalated quickly. I think he probably started getting really upset halfway through the season when he was no longer allowed to cook. And, I think the Shane Waldron thing helped a little bit, but I still think this is a guy where he's like, okay, like, I don't know if this is, he probably wanted someone else, but was like, of the people that you're interviewing, this is probably the best that you're going to get. And they maybe went out and got him. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see how they're going to play this out, because this is the time, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who want to be traded. Sean Watson. If you're going to trade Russ, I mean, I think you sit and wait another year. You can and see what happens. I don't know if he wants that. And I don't know if he'll actually come out and demand a trade request. But I mean, the more he puts the team on blast and players that are on the team, the more that likely he's going to get shipped out. I mean, look what happened with Richard Sherman, right? I mean, the year that he got cut, he called Russ, he told him he sucked, and that became a huge story and all this. And you got to wonder, like, what's the next step? And maybe this was definitely a planned thing. Like, I don't think like he was, just talking and on the Dan Patrick show. Like, Dan Patrick brought him on, asked him specific questions for a reason. And I think Russ wanted those questions, and he wanted it to be known, his frustration, and this is why. And maybe it's his time to say that it's time for him to get out. There's a lot of speculation now. You have to wonder, like, where does he go? How do we afford that? Like, there's a lot of things that, like, this is going to be an interesting offseason. I mean, this is going to dominate now. That deadline. Originally, I asked, like, hey, what do we do with Jamal Adams? He's an afterthought now. He's an afterthought compared to what's going to happen with Russ. I thought that the Jamal Adams, contract extension or trade would be the biggest thing that we would talk about all season. I felt like that was going to dominate, kind of the topic, and now this is just blowing it up. So I mean, man, I don't know. It's going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to wait and see. And there's going to be a lot of, like, he said, she said, and you start, reading what people are saying and listening to all these other reports. And, when I was watching the Chris Sims, Mike Florio thing, and you had talked about it previously, like, Jody Allen isn't going to step in and be like, oh, he wants to be traded, trade him. Like, she doesn't have that killer instinct that, like, Paul had. And, it's Pete and John's show. They're running this. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go forward, because, he's been one of the biggest players, that Seattle's had in a very long time. So I keep saying it's interesting, but it's not really, that's kind of frustrating, because I liked Russ and wants to see, the best out of having a top 5 quarterback and seeing what he can do for the first, 8 games of the season or whatever, knowing that he has the capability to be an MVP candidate. You could try to point out all sorts of things. You could point it to the offensive line. You could point it to the offensive coordinator. There's all sorts of different things, but at some point you have to also point it at Russ. How much is he willing to take blame? I don't know, man. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is. And I think, look, it just boils down to this for me, Robbie. The Seahawks are on the brink of losing their best player, unless Pete finds a way to sort this out. And it's just worth to listen. There's a lot of smugness, like I said. If you want to be an ostrich and bury your head in the sand over this, well, you need to wake up and smell the nano bubbles, quite frankly. You know, it's not, it might not be that Wilson, look, I don't think a Wilson trade is that doable, Robbie, purely for the financial aspects of this. Because I got in touch with Joel Corey earlier tonight on Twitter and asked him, you know, is it possible, because I've been saying this and I wanted to make sure I was accurate before the podcast. I asked him, is there anything preventing Russell Wilson saying, I want out so much that I'm willing to rework my deal to initiate a trade to lower the dead cap hit so that the Seahawks can make this happen. If the motivation was there to do that, could it be done? And Joel Corey said, Seattle will have $39 million in salary cap charges from trading Russell Wilson no matter what. The charges would come from his $65 million signing bonus that's prorated for 5 years. The timing of a trade would determine whether it's $39 million in 2021 or 13 this year and 26 next year. Now, you can look at this two ways. People said next year is more likely, or after June 1st more likely. I mean, what would you rather do? Just kind of get it out the way or have it spread out over a couple of years is kind of the thing I would think there. But $39 million for him to go and play somewhere else, you know, it's almost worth another first-round pick just for that aspect of it. So if someone says, I'll offer you 3, you've kind of got to go, well, we need 4 first-round picks because we're taking on $40 million of dead cap hit. We're essentially buying a first-round pick. And for it to be 40 million, it would have to be a high first-round pick. And, you know, that's when it becomes really difficult. So if Russell Wilson wants to go and play with Sean Payton, how the hell are the Saints going to be able to offer that kind of deal, knowing full well that you don't get a high first pick this year and you won't get a high pick for the next 5 years because the Saints, presumably with Russell Wilson, will continue to be a team at the top end of the NFC. So it's very difficult to do a trade, but it's just people who go on about, well, you can't trade him this year because of the money. So that, you know, it's a daft conversation. No, you have to have this conversation and understand. And I was listening to another radio broadcast earlier, Robbie, and they spent a lot of time sort of wondering, what does Russell Wilson want? You know, does he want to be in the scouting meetings? Does he want to be watching the free agents? Does he want to negotiate with Jamal Adams? They're missing the point. The point isn't that Russell wants to do all of those things, that he wants to slave over some Quinn Miners tape for 3 nights in a row. The point is that Russell Wilson wants to move. That's it. Unless they cave and do everything that he wants to go somewhere else. He's just trying, as Brandon Marshall put it, you know, he's just trying to find the way to make it all happen without actually just coming out and going, I want to move. And do you know what? I don't really have an issue with Wilson's stance, because I don't think anybody has to play for a team forever. And if he wants to go somewhere else, that we all have to hate the guy. But I kind of feel it's a little bit like a relationship, Robbie. And if you, you know, we're both guys, if I was seeing a girl, right, and she didn't want to be part of the relationship anymore, I'd rather she just tell me rather than kind of like go, well, and act awkward for a few months and make life difficult. And then, you know, in a year's time, then end the thing. I'd rather just do it. Just say it. Just come out and say it. And Russell Wilson just needs to come out and say it. I'm afraid he does. He has to say, I want to go. And then the Seahawks can just, at least then they know. And we all know. Because there's too much noise. It's been too much this week. There's too many sources being cited. Too much has been said since going back to May last year, when Mike Florio was saying that league sources don't think Russell Wilson's going to be in Seattle for much longer. This has been brewing for ages. And it's time to just acknowledge. And Wilson, I think, has to just spell it out for everybody so that those in denial can finally get a grip and understand what's going on here. And the Seahawks can come up with a plan. And part of me thinks, you know what, going back to the whole relationship point, Robbie, part of me thinks when you get to that point in a relationship, there's nothing you can do to repair it. You know, when the girl doesn't want to be with you anymore, it's very rare that you manage to just pull a rabbit out of a hat and all of a sudden she thinks you're the best thing since sliced bread. That doesn't happen. She goes off with somebody else. So I don't think there's any way of like Russell's clearly been stewing on this for a while, that the Seahawks go, I tell you what, Russell, we'll get you Corey Linsley to play center. He's like, oh, well, I'm back on board now. That's it. Everything's fixed. That's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. I think he wants out. And I think it's just about that. And just a quick final point before I let you come in again. I think the fact that it's got to this point is indicative of a rudderless franchise, I'm afraid to say. And people could hammer me for that, and I am anticipating some negative comments in the comment section on the blog for saying that. But I'm just trying to be honest with you. I'm just giving you my opinion. You can disagree, but it's my opinion. They are a rudderless franchise. For the quarterback, there's only 2 teams where a top elite franchise quarterback is requesting to leave. One's Deshaun Watson and the Texans, who are a hot mess. And it seems that Russell Wilson feels that way now. You don't want to be in that company. And if there's no true leadership at the top. And this is not to criticize. I'm not criticizing Jody Allen. I will never criticize Jody Allen because she didn't buy a football team. She inherited a football team. And she's just holding the fort until a new owner comes in, which probably isn't going to be for a few years because of coronavirus and a global pandemic. And these things don't happen overnight. So the franchise is in a holding pattern. And Pete Carroll has basically been given the keys to the franchise. He's been extended for 5 years, Robbie, to get to the next owners, whether that's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Basically, Jody Allen is saying to Pete Carroll, I trust you to run my franchise from a football's perspective until a new owner comes in. That's really it. That's where we're at. But you're placing everything in the hands of a 70-year-old coach who is determined to end his career doing it the way he wants to do. And the franchise quarterback who's reached the peak of his career wants to do things his way as well. And you have to make a decision. Are you going to go with the longevity of the coach to get you through to ownership and risk losing your franchise quarterback? Or do you want to empower your franchise quarterback and say, this is the guy who's going to lead us to another Super Bowl and make the business a raging success for years to come? That's the key question, really. And look, they're not going to fire Pete now in February, but it's really either or. And that's indicative of, again, of Wilson wanting out. And there's not really much you can do about it. This is just Russell wants to do his thing. Pete wants to do his thing. And there isn't a middle ground where everyone's happy. It just isn't. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the difficulty in my next rant, Robbie. I'm calling it a rant. I'll do that next, but I'll give you a chance to respond to what I've said.
Yeah, I just want to touch base really on the fact that, like, I understand why people don't want to talk about this and why people are who just brush this off. People are, they care about their players that are on their team, right? I mean, no one wanted to see, Earl leave or Richard Sherman leave, and everyone was kind of like, tied to these players and such. But the reality is these players have to make decisions for themselves, and they do go that way. But I understand why people are. They don't want to believe it, they're no, well, Russ is, he's a Hawk for life, go Hawks and all these kind of things. But I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, he just does want out. And we're in a situation where Pete is going to run the show for the next 5 years. Right? He's not going to get let go. He just in a contract extension. Jody's not going to come in and fire him because Russ wants to, make some noise. That's just not the reality of the situation. And so, yeah, man, I agree with everything you're saying, and there's still a chance. I mean, if you start thinking about trade partners and actually making a trade this year, you can see some opportunity to really make some noise. I mean, you can really improve your team still. I mean, none of it's ideal. You start thinking about, like, well, why would you trade an elite? No one trades elite, franchise quarterbacks, and you start thinking about all the quarterbacks that were before him, Hasselbeck and all those other guys that were before him. And, and as much as I love Matt, he wasn't on Russ's level. We've never had a quarterback of his stature, never won a Super Bowl. And, this is just, you start looking at guys who are, could be available in free agent. None of these guys are excited. Like, do I want to trade him to the Jets for Sam Darnold and some picks? Probably not. Do I want to trade him for to Miami and some of the picks? I mean, maybe if you're going to give me the 2nd, the 18th, and 36th, and then a couple other number one picks, then yeah, maybe I'm going to be on board for that, because then at least it gives you opportunity to draft maybe Zach Wilson or someone else that is high up on my list of players. But again, there's no guarantee. You watch Zach Wilson's tape, and there's no guarantees on these quarterbacks that are coming in. Like, that he could be someone that he looks great, but he could be just awful. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into play on talking about a trade. At the end of the day, he's making noise. It used to come from Mark Rodgers, And now Russ is doing it himself. I think this is where, it's the relationship is fractured. And you're right. I was listening to Danny and Gallant this morning, and Gallant was all like, "No, just give him T.Y. Hilton. He'll be fine." I was like, why? Why would T.Y. Hilton be like, "Oh, Russ, I'm just going to forget about it for a while because you gave me T.Y. Hilton"? I'm sorry, T.Y. Hilton is a good player, but you've got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I don't think bringing in a third receiver of the stature of T.Y. Hilton and saying, "Oh, now everything is fine, we can ride it off for a year and see what happens." I just don't think that's a reality. And then, Danny was all like, "Oh man, let's just go just give him the keys for the year. Let him make all the decisions. And then if it doesn't work, you say, 'Well, told you, it's on you.'" You don't run a franchise like that. You don't do things like that. So when they're talking about this, it just seems ridiculous. I love the idea of beefing up the O-line, to be honest. If we could go get O-line, and maybe get Russ just to be like, "Okay, you got the O-line, but he's still going to make noise about something next year." This is what I think. I think because like you said, the relationship is fractured. He wants out. Yeah, we might not trade him this year. It's a might, just because of the salary cap implications and stuff like that. But I think this is coming to a very ugly divorce. I think this is what's coming down. And like you said, the whole girlfriend aspect of it, as a good analogy, I think this is just something that, I would prefer to get it out of the way now, but if it has to be in a year, it's going to be in a year. But this is one of those things where this story isn't going to go away anytime, and people need to get on board with it. They need to start thinking reality and what do they want for the Seahawks. We want to win Super Bowls. And if Russ doesn't want to be here to win a Super Bowl, then let's try to sell them for as high as we can to get as many picks as we can to get the best players we can, because we're going to need a lot to take up to recover from, a franchise quarterback leaving.
Yeah, I just don't think there's, I think that's the problem, is that people are getting hung up on this. Russell's mentioned the O-line, and Russell wants this and Russell wants that and I think people are getting caught up on that too much. And you've got to look beyond that. This is an awkward Russell Wilson not really knowing how to end this relationship while remaining, while avoiding being public enemy number one in Seattle. That's basically it. That's basically what it is. Because Russell Wilson has no interest. He'll want to come back to Seattle one day, and he'll want to be considered, a player that fans liked. And look, personally, Robbie, I'm not the kind of fan who, if Russell Wilson went to play for the Saints, that would root against the Saints every week next year. I'm not the kind of person who hates Tom Brady because he won a Super Bowl against the Seahawks, even though he didn't really do anything in order to win that game, apart from lead an admirable comeback in the fourth quarter. I'm not the kind of person who just hates people because they slighted us or they did something that's not quite. But there are a hell of a lot of fans who will feel that way. If Russell Wilson asks for a trade and ends up at the Saints, I can see it now on the UK Seahawks Facebook page. "Oh, good. The Saints lost. Ha, Russell." That's because that's just how fans are. And look, Wilson's conscious of that. He wants to leave, probably wants to leave, but doesn't want to do it in a way whereby it ends up in ugly, horrible, negative divorce. But the thing is, there's no playbook for how you get away from a team when you're under contract with a $39 million dead cap hit and you are much loved by the fans. There's no okay, if I just do this, this, and this, then I can get everything out at once and they'll still like me. I mean, it's a divorce, like you said. I wish he'd rather just come out and say it. I want to trade. I want to go and play with Sean Payton. I want to go and play for John Gruden for some reason. Or I want to go in New York so Sierra can be in New York. Whatever it is. I'd just rather him be honest with it. And look, it'd be remiss not to sort of say, what would it take? Let's at least consider, what would it take to get Russell Wilson on board? First thing is Pete retiring tomorrow. That's one thing. And appointing an offensive-minded, creative head coach, Eric Bieniemy or somebody like that. I don't know. That's one thing that would probably do it. Two, Pete Carroll turning around to Russell Wilson and saying, "Okay, Russ, I've heard you. We'll do everything that you want. You can run the offense with Shane Waldron, and you two can do, and I won't have any say in it. Write a list of free agents that you want us to go after, and we'll see what we can do. And I'll text you the night before the draft. And if you just watch YouTube for a few hours, and you can let me know which which receiver and running back that you like, an offensive lineman, and we'll make sure we draft them too." That's probably the two options. And do you see either of those happening? Because I do not. And Robbie's shaking his head as well. But anyone who thinks that Russell Wilson is going to waste a season seeing how this goes because of the $39 million dead cap hit, I think you'll find that you're kidding yourselves. I mean, as I said, he's 33 in November. He's probably, 2 years away from being titled an aging quarterback. He's in his 30s now. He's approaching his mid-30s. He may only have, he can say he wants 10 or 15 more years. He might only have 7 or 8. And if he wants to win multiple Super Bowls, knowing how difficult that is, time is of the essence for him. And wasting another year in a philosophy that he doesn't believe in and not getting what he wants on offense or in terms of personnel will have no appeal to Russell Wilson. So this concept that, well, he'll just wait another year and see how it goes, I think he's much more likely to try and force a trade than go down that route. And that's when the Seahawks are going to have a big call to make, because he's already pushing the boundaries and trying to test what he can get away with. If he actually comes out and says, no, I want to go, I'm requesting a trade. What the Seahawks do then is going to be fascinating, because they can either go no and live with the consequences of that. And what happens then? Does he hold out? Do you have a complete mess? What does it do for the dynamic in your locker room? I mean, Wilson knows all this, because you can't live with your franchise quarterback holding out or being a pain. There's just no living with that. You kind of have to trade him at that point. So I think if he requests a trade, $39 million dead cap hit or not, if he asks to go, you've kind of got to work out a way to make it happen, I'm afraid. And it's serious. It really, really is serious. And I've just to let you know, Robbie, that it just carries on and on and on, this story. Since we started recording a podcast, there's another development. And the NFL Network, through Tom Pelissero, is reporting that more teams have reached out about Russell Wilson. So that's the latest report. He then goes on to say, but the Seahawks have shown no inclination to trade their star quarterback, whose media tour continues. I love the fact that it's considered a tour now, like he's like Aerosmith or something. And he's doing the rounds, like appearing in Philadelphia, it's Aerosmith with Russell Wilson. I just love this idea that it's a media. I hope it is a media tour, because it is quite an interesting story. I mean, like, every time he speaks, like there's a new development. So we'll see what's next. Who's he going to speak to next? I mean, surely when Colin's back on his feet, his old friend Colin Cowherd, there'll be another interview there to come. But all jokes aside, I want to ask you about this, Robert, because when I saw this report like 10 minutes ago, I'm thinking, who's releasing this information? Who's releasing this information? More teams have reached out, but the Seahawks are showing no inclination of trading him, which implies that it's the Seahawks who may have said, because why would the Carolina Panthers say, yeah, we tried, but the Seahawks just aren't showing any inclination of trading him? That doesn't sound like the kind of thing a prospective buyer would say, because a prospective buyer wants the leverage of they might trade him to be out there. So they're not saying that. So that's presumably come from the Seahawks side of things. And if it has, why are the Seahawks saying, yeah, more teams are reaching out, but I tell you what, we're just not showing any inclination of a trade at this point. It doesn't. And if it was done, look, you can use tone to shift, to portray something. It may well be, hi, it's Tom Pelissero here from the NFL Network. Is that John Schneider? Yes, it is. Have any other teams called? Yes, they have. Have you shown any inclination of trading him? No. And then the conversation is completely different. He's just being honest. But even then, I was kind of thinking, well, why would you answer the phone? If your idea is that we're not trading him, then say, we are not trading him. And here's the thing, Robbie, it's Thursday now, and this was kind of brewing on Monday. If they want to nip this in the bud right now, they could just say, under no circumstances are we trading Russell Wilson. Period. He's not going anywhere. They haven't done that. And if this has come from the Seahawks side, what are they doing? Are they trying to drum up a market all of a sudden? Are they trying to just, and look, they're trying to drum up a market. Maybe they understand that this can't go anywhere, that this is going one way. Maybe they understand that the divorce is on the cards. Or maybe They just want to see what's the best offer they can get before making a decision. And if you're thinking, well, do you know what? We've heard from the Saints and we know what their best offer is, and we've heard from the Panthers, but what about the Jets, who've got the number 2 overall pick? And what about the Dolphins, who've got the number 3 overall pick? You know, if we just let it be known that more teams are calling, maybe one of those two will just get in touch with us and offer us something a little bit more attractive. I mean, you could speculate, and I am speculating, on and tie yourselves up in knots with stuff like this. But it's interesting, and the story's not going away. It's like every time you switch on Twitter or the internet, there's a new report from Lacamfora, Florio, or Pellicero, or Rappaport. And I'm kind of just waiting for the day from Adam Schefter, who's kind of quietly in the shadows on all of this and not said anything so far. Russell Wilson has been traded. Adam Schefter, exclusive story. I don't know, man. What do you make of the fact that that story's come out while we've been on air?
Yeah, so I got a couple of thoughts. I'm gonna backtrack just for a second there. So I'm just gonna bring up the Saints aspect of it because you brought up the Saints, and I personally don't think that if we do trade Russell Wilson, we are not trading him within the NFC. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think, the Dolphins, the Jets, maybe the Colts, but I don't see us trading him to the Saints or any other NFC team. I just don't see that being a realistic thing that we would do. I mean, unless they came back with an offer. I don't know what the Saints could actually even offer that would be as attractive as something like the Jets or Dolphins could offer. So I mean, plus the salary cap issues that they have. I mean, I don't care how much Russell Wilson wants to play for Sean Payton, just because he says I want to go. Like, even if he came out and said I want to trade, I want to go to the Saints, make it happen. I don't think the Seahawks would be like, oh, sure, okay, we're just going to accompany you on that and just give you what you want.
What if they offer 6 first-round picks?
Well, I mean, okay, but I mean, still, like you said, they're playing. So you're basically the second-round picks are very like back end first-round picks. You're not talking like a top 5 draft pick here. So I don't think that's realistic. I just don't. And I mean, I don't know how you would actually feel about 6 first round picks, but Russell Wilson, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, or whoever else they have, Sean Payton, they're not going to be picking in the top 10 anytime soon. So I just don't see that being something. Plus, we're going to play the Saints. I just don't think that's something they're going to want to do. And then I kind of disagree a little bit on the aspect of, like, if Russell Wilson does come out and say, hey, I want to trade, that we have to accompany him on that. I think he has a no trade clause. He is under contract. I think if they don't find an offer that they want, they just said, you're going to need to suck it up and play. And I don't think Russell's going to have a holdout, but I do think there would be a lot of tension in the locker room. And he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would do that. But of course, I never thought he's the type of guy that would, throw his offensive line under the bus. So who knows, man, at this point, but I just don't see that being real. I think we would just hold on to him and then next year maybe, accompany a trade and see what happens.
If he requests a trade, he's finished in Seattle.
Oh, I mean, I agree. I just don't think, like, if we don't get the offer we want, I could see us waiting, is all I'm saying. I mean, if he does request a trade, he's done. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he's not going, but I just don't know if it would happen.
I think it happened now. I think they take the best offer. And I think given that what the offers we're looking at for people like Stafford, I think it would be a huge stonking offer as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be a haul. It's going to have to be a huge haul for us to trade Russell Wilson. I mean, what Stafford was, what they traded for Stafford, it needs to be double that, in my opinion. I mean, it's got to have to be maybe triple that. It's got to be a huge haul. And, I mean, that's where it starts to get a little bit of, like, almost of attractive for Seahawks fans, just for the simple fact that, like, man, you could get all these picks, but then you also have to flip it to that and be like, man, how have we used our picks? And, like, will we make the right decisions with those picks? And I know a lot of people are worried about that aspect of it, of like, hey, are we going to go get the right people? If we trade Russell Wilson and we get a bunch of LJ Colliers, how happy you're going to be with that, right? So, like, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of things to play into that, but I mean, the idea of maybe getting the right players and the right picks and building another dynasty or something would be it's appealing, and it's hard not to talk about and maybe dream of a sweet scenario where we get everything we could possibly get for one of the best players we've ever had. And so what do I think about the NFL releasing you're right. I think it comes from the Seahawks. I think part of it comes from Mark Rodgers. I think there's a combination of things going on. I think Rodgers is trying to drum up more interest for Wilson as well, because he wants his client out of Seattle, and he does this every year. He does all sorts of stuff. He's always talking to talking to media. And, maybe it's Russell Wilson's marketing team or whatever, trying to drum up more interest so people will go offer more. And, I bet the Seahawks are probably, they might say, we're not interested, but I bet they're fielding offers and listening. And I bet, if they're going to make a trade, they're going to do whatever they can to make sure it's the best deal possible. So leak more information out to try to get, a better offer.
I think it's fascinating. I really do think it's fascinating, and we do say the Seahawks are never dull, and we're sort of experiencing that now. I think, look, the one thing that I've got a few thoughts on in response to what you said. I think the great thing about it is, Robbie, is something has to give now. Something has to give now, one way or another, because Wilson's kind of holding this team to account in a way that nobody else really has in recent years. So they won't be able to have another off season like last year, where they squandered loads of money on, or spend $2 million on a defensive end here, and $2 million on a left guard here, and $7 million on a Sam linebacker who's well into his 30s, and and make moves like that, and waste $4.2 million on Joey Hunt and Brandon Jackson. They're not going to not be able to do that now with Russell Wilson watching over them. So they've got $2 million in effective cap space now, and Russell Wilson's saying, you've got to do something about the O-line, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. Well, they can't do any of those things unless they generate some money. So pretty soon, we're going to have to see some of them finding the resources and doing a little bit of what I was talking about in what my off-season plan would be, which is maybe considering trading Bobby Wagner, considering trading Jamal Adams, creating some cap space, and then having the money and the freedom and the picks to be able to do what Russell Wilson does. If you want to keep Russell Wilson in Seattle, you've got to show that you mean business, and that is going to mean transferring resources from linebacker and safety, which we've talked about. It's ridiculous how much Seattle has invested in those two positions over the last 2 or 3 years compared to how much they've invested in other areas of the team. You need to transfer some of that resource to the O-line, to the D-line, to wide receiver, to cornerback. That's just what they need to do anyway, and this will put pressure on them to do that. The other alternative is they're going to trade Russell Wilson, and we're going to be talking about a quarterback. So, I'm already watching quarterback tape on YouTube, Robbie, in anticipation of something happening here, because I want to be ready to roll with an article if that happens, with here's who I think fits the Seahawks. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm struggling to work that one out in terms of this draft class. I am struggling to work that one out. Now, in terms of potential destinations, I agree with you completely that the last thing the Seahawks will want to do is trade into the NFC. In particular, a good NFC team, as the Saints have been for a few years now. I think that Russell, though, will have a very firm idea of the team he wants to play for. And he'll want to go somewhere still where he can do what he wants to do. And I'm not sure a completely rebuilding team, or a team that has a defensive-minded head coach, especially Robert Saleh, one who's come from the Pete Carroll way of doing things, is going to appeal to him. Now, the idea of replacing Drew Brees in New Orleans, Brees, one of Wilson's heroes when he was, coming through the college ranks and looking up to somebody who could emulate in the NFL, is a dream come true for Russell Wilson. And the Sean Payton-Russell Wilson matchup is things dreams are made of. And so if you're a neutral NFL fan or a Saints fan, you look at that and you think, wow, what a combination. And I think part of this, as well as everything we've already talked about, is Wilson knowing that the New Orleans have got a job vacancy going there because Drew Brees is retiring, and he quite fancies taking the gig. And I don't think they want to trade into the Saints, but it's what if you get offered? And let me just read a bit of this Jason LaConfora article from Sunday. So this was the Sunday splash report from LaConfora. If I were an enterprising NFL head coach or general manager, especially one who's worked in one of the more glamorous locales in the league, I would start peppering the Seahawks with trade suggestions. He then goes on to say, it would take a Herculean offer to pry him away, but I'd want to hear no with my own ears. And then he said, would 4 first-round picks get it done? 5? Think big either way. Now, if I'm the Saints, Sean Payton, he's been there a long time. And I don't know if he's going to be coaching for another 10 years, Robbie. I'm just saying, when I was kind of half joking with the 6 first-round picks thing. Could the Saints live without first-round picks for the next 5 years if they had Russell Wilson with a roster that's ready to compete? And yeah, they're gonna have to make some savings somewhere because they're $1 bajillion over the cap. But if they just feels like they can go from competing with Drew Brees to competing with Russell Wilson, I'm just saying, the Rams have given up on first-round picks. Maybe the Saints just think this is our key to being a contender for the rest of Sean Payton's time in New Orleans. And maybe they think that Russell Wilson can win them 2 or 3 Super Bowls in that time. And if you are offered, and look, here's another thing. The Saints are desperate to get rid of Michael Thomas. They've not admitted that, but they are. They're desperate to get rid of Michael Thomas. They think he's a pain in the arse. Would they chuck him in as well? I mean, I'm just saying, and then all of a sudden you kind of think as the Seahawks, you're thinking, well, the Dolphins are offering us number 3. We don't really like any of the quarterbacks in this draft, and they're only offering 2 more first-round picks. Or we could have 5 and a player from the Saints, or 2 players. I don't know. It's kind of, if Jamal Adams is worth 2 and a third and a player, what's Russell Wilson worth? It's like, well, he's probably worth 5.
Yeah, I mean,
so at what point do you start thinking, you know what, as much as we don't want to do this, actually, we could do a lot with those picks. Look, I don't think it's, again, I'm just sort of saying, I'm not saying for a second that I think Russell Wilson's going to be traded to the Saints this offseason. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen for that to get to that point. And the Saints might not want to, they might just give Taysom Hill the job. I just have a hard time thinking Sean Payton's going to think, yeah, do you know what, I'm going to rest my last few years, or the rest of my years in New Orleans on either drafting a quarterback in the late first round, Jameis Winston, or Taysom Hill. It's Sean freaking Payton. He's used to the best of the best with Breeze. We all saw Taysom Hill when he started. Well, it wasn't a complete disaster. It was like Tim Tebow was playing for them, for Christ's sake. So I shouldn't say Christ with Tebow. But anyway, the point being is that I can see them being aggressive in some way. And if it's not the Saints, you were right. AFC, Jason Leconfor wrote a whole post about why the Raiders could be an option. And that makes sense because Gruden doesn't like young quarterbacks. And Gruden's, like, for the last 20 years has been searching, ever since the one in Tampa Bay when they won the Super Bowl, has been searching for a quarterback. And even if he got Russell Wilson, he probably won't be happy with Russell. But, that's Gruden for you, And the son of Al Davis wants to make a splash, and he's got them in Las Vegas. And what better way to have that stadium rocking with fans in it for the first time than having Wilson on the Raiders? I mean, great. It fits. It's a Raiders. It's an Al Davis move. And would the Raiders give up 5 first-round picks? They probably would, because John Gruden keeps losing every season. Last 5 games, they lose them and they miss out on the playoffs. And they're thinking, well, we don't want to keep doing that. Gruden's got a 10-year contract. How many years are left? Like 7? I don't have a great quarterback for those 7 years. So, look, there are teams where it makes sense. And it's just about what the Seahawks could potentially be tempted with to move on. But I'm at the point, Robbie, where I don't think we should hide away from having that conversation. I mean, people are scared to have a chat like this. I think if there's one thing we've done on this podcast over the last few months, is it's be willing to kind of go anywhere. And as we sit here today on the 11th of February, it's a bloody good job that we did, because people just haven't been talking about a lot of things that needed to talk about over the last few months.
Yeah, I agree. And then you look at it too, where we have to start thinking about the realistic possibility of him going, and you want to be a little prepared, and you don't want to be just like devastated with not expecting something to happen and having it happen. You look at it, and one of my fears is with trading Russell Wilson would be the simple fact that, like, we traded 2 firsts, a player, and a third for Jamal Adams. We paid a quarterback price for a blitzing safety. I mean, are we going to get fleeced in a Russell Wilson trade? Are the Dolphins going to come in and say, well, we'll give you the third and the 18th pick and maybe a third next year, and we take it, and get fleeced in something like that? that's my biggest fear, is that we just get fleeced in a trade. I mean, I'm not saying John Snyder hasn't done a good job at making trades. There's some that have been questionable. Carlos Dunlap, getting him was huge, and getting rid of a offensive lineman that we made a mistake on, and that kind of thing. We've made some good decisions there and such, but I just worry about that kind of aspect of getting fleeced in a trade where, you're right, you're talking about 6 first rounds and we end up only getting like 2 and a second or something. Like, I just worry about those kind of things, but this is a conversation that's not going to go away. I'm glad we started talking about it prior, because I've been watching it and seeing that this very much could be a possibility, and thinking about life after Russ, because it's coming to that decision, right? I mean, you never know, maybe this does blow over and it's a lot of hogwash, and maybe it is Russell just trying to, see how much more control he can get. Maybe Waldron was his guy. He got him, and I was like, well, let's see how much more I can get. Let's see, like, if I push a little more buttons, if I do a little more things, maybe I can control a little bit more. Maybe I can get the player that I'm gunning for. Maybe there's a player that he's eyeing that he, that's an offensive lineman that he wants us to go get. So he's setting it out there now. Maybe this is his strategic plan to maybe go get that player. Maybe he does want to stay in Seattle, but he just wants to do these kind of things. And I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could happen, but we need to be open to the possibility that anything is on the table at this point, because trading him, keeping him, anything like that could happen. And we just have to be prepared for, what's coming down the pipeline, and just keep watching that Twitter feed and wait for Adam Schefter, because you're right. There could be that day where it comes, and then it's just like, it happened.
Well, I have to say, Robbie, that, my perhaps final thought on all of this would be is that I actually kind of just, I don't care anymore. If Russell Wilson wants to go, let him go. Do you know what I really miss about being a Seahawks fan? It's following a team that is fresh and young and hungry and just wants to prove a point. I crave those years. Do you know how annoying the 2011 season could be at times? But what got you through it was the fact that there was a Marshawn, and there was the defense that was, God, they had the angriest, most physical, most brutal defense and running game in the league. And you just knew if they could just find a quarterback, that it could bring everything together. And then they got one. And then sort of the excitement at the end of that 2012 season, when you thought, we are watching something special emerge here. And it was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time. So they were the world's best. And they got there. And it was so good. And it was so fun. We're just watching stupid, annoying, frustrating, soap opera stuff. Players, the quarterback's not happy anymore, and he wants this, that, and the other. And the coach is, I don't know, maybe the coach does need a change and to freshen up. And we've got guys who were here in 2011 and 2012 still. To me, Robbie, I'm almost at the point now, and I know what people say, be careful what you wish for. And I don't want the Seahawks to be 4-12 and 5-11 every year, or perennially 7-9. I'd hate that just as much. But part of me thinks, well, where are they going? Because at the moment, does anybody honestly think, sat here today, that what will happen is this will just blow over in a couple of weeks, and then Russ will be throwing to DK in California or something, and Pete will be talking about how they just need to get another linebacker in the draft and they'll be okay. And then we rock up in September and it's like, yeah, and wow, and they're flying around and they actually look like a legit Super Bowl contender. And then they go on a great playoff run and they win a Super. Does anybody honestly see that right now? Because I think it couldn't be anything further from the truth. And I don't think they're close to being a Super Bowl contender. And people go, what about 12-4? I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. The Bears were 12-4 a couple of years ago. The Bears with Mitch Trubisky, they were 12-4. The Chargers were 12-4 a couple of years ago. And then they won 5 games the next year. 12-4 means jack. It doesn't matter. I don't think the Seahawks are a legit Super Bowl contender. I haven't watched the playoffs and thought, yeah, do you know what? The Seahawks are a piece or two away here. If they just get a left guard, they'll be all right. Or if they just get another receiver, they'll be... No, they don't look close. They don't look close. And I think it's going to take a lot to become close. And I think that with the starting the offseason with the quarterback essentially having a massive whamp about what he expects and believes in his legacy and all this, and hinting not so subtly that he wants to go somewhere else. And actually someone in Brandon Marshall, which is where we start this whole thing, is saying, I think Russell Wilson wants to leave the Seahawks. This is not the recipe for a great, successful, let's take it back in 2021. It just isn't. It really, really isn't. So I'm kind of ready, Robbie, to just draw a line under the whole thing, and let's go. If that's what it takes, go and get a new QB. Let's go and draft some guys. Let's at least enjoy that rather than spending the next 6 weeks wondering where Russell Wilson's going to go.
Yeah, and it's funny you said be careful what you wish for, because I was about to say that. We can talk all we want about trading Russell Wilson. We've said time and time again that Russ will get you 8 games at least. If 6 to 8. That he's going to win you that many games regardless of who's on the team, because he's a good player, and so that's why teams are super interested in him as well. Like, he's got that star ability, and and he's going to win you football games. And we could be in a situation where we're drafting someone like Brock Osweiler thinking that he could be great, and he sucks, and or whatever the case might be, and we're looking at a 4-12 team, and we're, man, if we just would have had Russell Wilson, we would have won, maybe 8 more games or something like that. And then you also have to start thinking about the repercussions of trading Russell Wilson as well. What does that do for DK Metcalf? You finally have a superstar wide receiver who is everything that Pete's been looking for since he's been here. He's big, he's fast, he's aggressive, he plays with an attitude. And what happens with him? Like, you got to bring someone in that's going to be able to mesh with him just as much as Russ has. And if you trade him, you're going to have issues with DK. DK is probably going to want to go out. I mean, if you're going to do this, let's be honest here. If you're going to trade Russell Wilson, you better blow this damn thing up. You don't hold on to Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams just because you can. If you're going to trade your franchise quarterback, and for the haul that you're going to get, unless you're confident in the picks that you're getting and the players that you're receiving back, you blow it up and you start from scratch. Because to get back, Rob, where you wanted to a young, hungry, angry football team, you got to start when you made 190 transactions in 2 years or whatever. When you were cutting guys left and right and bringing new guys in and trying all these different things to get the right mix and the right mold of players, you've got to go out and do that. And if you're willing to trade your franchise quarterback, then you better be willing to blow it up and start over. That's kind of where I'm at. Like I don't think trading Russ, and then, I mean, depending on what we get, maybe we do trade him to the Raiders and we get Derek Carr in return, and we think Derek Carr can hold it off for a year while we have somebody that we draft and with a 3rd or 2nd pick, and like Zach Wilson or someone like that, and have him sit and be clipboard holder and then see what you got there. But in my opinion, if you're going to do it, you better blow it up, because it just doesn't make any sense. You're right, because we don't look like a team that is going to win the Super Bowl. I mean, maybe if you could replace a few pieces here and there, but we just don't have the draft capital. We don't have the salary for it. There's a lot of things going against us in this. So I don't know what your thoughts on that, but man, I just feel like if you're going to do this, then do it. Like, go all the way in.
I don't think blowing it up is the right thing to do in that instance, because I think if they trade Russell Wilson, I'm actually sort of thinking, well, we've now got the chance to repeat a little bit of what we did in 2011, 2012, which is get a young, cheap quarterback in. And if you nail that one, and look, I appreciate that they might not nail the quarterback pick, but at least you aim to do that. That's the aim, isn't it? That you bring in a cheap quarterback who can run the offense, and then that gives you the flexibility and the freedom and the cap space to load up your roster elsewhere. So I think that if you trade Russell Wilson, then it does take some. I mean, look, I still don't think Bobby Wagner's worth 17 million this year and 20 million next year, and they've drafted Jordan Brooks. So I'd still be inclined to see what you can get for Bobby Wagner and start Jordan Brooks. Otherwise, don't draft Jordan Brooks. That's what I would say. And then with Jamal Adams, I don't think he's a great scheme fit. So I would also be thinking, I'd quite happily see if we could trade him too. But in terms of but that's not, that to me is because I don't think Bobby's worth 17-20, and that's because I don't think Jamal's worth 18-20. Okay, so that's why I'm making that. I'm not using the term blow it up, because then I'd like to take that money and I'd like to go and bring in some badass bloody free agents, and I want to load up the roster You know, I want to give that young quarterback a fantastic O-line. I want to go and get a stud running back and another great receiver. And I want to get a great corner. I want to bring Richard back to play corner and lead the team. You know, I don't want to blow anything up. I want to.
My only counter argument to that would be is who's going to want to, like, you're not going to go out and get like a bunch of these guys aren't going to want to come play if we just traded Russell Wilson. Like, that's why I don't think you're not going to go out, and you have to think of the repercussions of trading Russ. Some of these free agents are like, you just traded your franchise quarterback. I don't know who this new quarterback is you got. I don't know anything about what you're going to have to overpay for, maybe even more than you would have to bring him in. You better show me the money if you want me to come play for you and not possibly win a Super Bowl without Russell Wilson being there. And then again, you have to think about the repercussions of how DK is going to feel, how Tyler's going to feel. They all have super close relationships with Russ. And then this is what I'm talking about. I'm not saying, maybe blow it up was the wrong term. Like, 'cause I'm not saying trade DK, trade Tyler, go trade everybody and just bring in a whole new cast of characters. But you have to think about some of the repercussions. And I guess that would be my only counter argument, is that, man, are these free agents going to want to come play in Seattle if we trade Russell Wilson?
Well, all I would say to that is free agents go where the money is, and if you're offering the most, then they'll come. You know, and let's be right here. Even with Russell Wilson, it's hard like the Seahawks done a cracking job luring people to Seattle over the years. They haven't been able to get bargain basement Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill deals in the 7 years since that actually happened. So I don't think there was any real benefit to that. And yes, you're right. If they try and sign Brandon Scherf, let's say, in free agency, he's not going to be going, well, I'll take a $5 million discount because I want to go and play with Russell. He wouldn't do that anyway. I mean, like, he would go and play for the freaking Jaguars if they offered him 15, 16 million. And we've seen it. You know, Calais Campbell went to the Jaguars. You know, Norwood went to the Jaguars. You know, people go where the money is. So,
right. But I guess what I'm saying though is if there's a team that's offering the same amount, would that team, would he rather go play with the quarterback that maybe is established? Let's say someone like, I don't know, those Rams are going to try to sign the same player we are, and they're offering him the same amount of money we are, but we just traded Russell Wilson. They're probably going to, well, I'm going to want to go play with the team that's got an established quarterback.
But the Rams are not going to be in the market for the big top free agents because they haven't got the money.
Right. So, I mean, I'm just using them as an example. Just another, I couldn't think of another team, so I threw out the Rams. I mean, that's all. That's what I'm saying.
The only thing I'd say is that every year, top free agents sign for bad teams, and I don't think there's any fear that if you blow it up, that people won't come to Seattle just because Russell Wilson. In fact, some players might actually quite like the idea of being part of a new generation, of a new era. Certainly, let's put it this way. Let's just use the Seahawks as an example. Sidney Rice in 2011 and Zach Miller, they had offers and they came to Seattle because they offered a good contracts and they came to be part of this. So, not every player does that. But and the other thing on the careful what you wish for thing, you see, be careful what you wish for would be a perfect counter to anybody who was saying, get rid of Russell Wilson. He's not doing it enough for us. If Russell Wilson was happy and safe and not wanting to go anywhere, because that would be thinking the grass is greener when it isn't. This is not one of those situations. This is Russell Wilson saying, I want to leave. So careful what you wish for isn't necessarily relevant with this, because I'm saying if he wants to leave, then that's it. The idea of him coming back next year, having requested a trade, is just unfeasible. You just cannot have the leader of your team walking in on day one of training camp going, right, fellas, I know that I said I was desperate to get away from here, but let's go win a chip. It's just not going to happen. I mean, everyone would tend to shut the F up, quite frankly. I mean, good luck looking Dwayne Brown in the eye after you've just demanded a trade and saying, come on, Dwayne, give me all you've got, pal, age 37 or whatever you are. It's just not realistic. So that's the next domino to fall. That's the next domino, I think. It's whether or not Russell Wilson's willing to do what Deshaun Watson has done and officially request a trade. And then if that doesn't happen, whether the Seahawks can do something to set the ball rolling for doing what they think they need to do to make their quarterback happy. But as I said before, the only way to make the quarterback happy is to cede everything to him. Offensive philosophy and complete control and the promise that you will not interfere after 5 games if they have a crap game in Buffalo followed by a crap game in LA. And I don't know if Russell Wilson trusts that Pete can resist not interfering. I think Russ knows Pete better than anybody. apart from maybe Mrs. Pete, and he knows full well that Pete will interfere, and that's why I think it's one of the main reasons why he wants out. And the other thing, apart from giving him complete control of the offense, is creating the resource to go and bring him in a whole great O-line and great receivers and basically produce an all-star team in the same way that Tampa Bay has done. Because Tampa Bay did create an all-star team. Let's just be right here. They did. They brought in Tom Brady. They already had Godwin and Evans, and they still brought in Antonio Brown. And they had OJ Howard and Cameron Brate, and they still brought in Rob Gronkowski. They had Ronald Jones II, and they spent a highest draft pick on a running back, and they still brought in Leonard Fournette. They did everything. And they drafted an offensive lineman in the first round. They did everything. It was like, we've got Tom Brady. Now we're going to make sure Tom Brady is happy. If Tom Brady asks for a new toothbrush, we're going to get him a new toothbrush. If Tom Brady asks for another offensive lineman, we're going to get him another offensive lineman. They would do whatever it takes to make Tom happy. And Russell Wilson's seen that, and he's thinking, that does not happen in Seattle. I have to listen to a 70-year-old head coach tell me what I'm going to do on offense. And that's just not fit. And that's why it comes back to, Robbie, what I said at the start. Russell Wilson wants to leave. And now the ball has been smashed via serve, like at the Australian Open, into the Seahawks court. And is their return going to be one from Federer and Djokovic and Nadal? Or is it going to be a return like it was you or I, trying to fit that ball back into the other side of the net? We're going to find out, because I'll tell you something now, Robbie. I don't see this just going quiet for a couple of weeks and then come March, all of a sudden it rears its head again. Things are escalating very quickly, as they did with Deshaun Watson. And it culminated in Deshaun Watson making a trade request. And the Texans said, we aren't trading you. What are the Seahawks going to do? They haven't made that statement yet. Nick Caserio came out at a press conference and said, thank you. Before we start, I know there's been a lot of talk about the quarterback, but I'm just here to tell you that we are not trading Deshaun Watson. And he made that statement very clear. John, Pete, are you going to do that? Because until you do, rumors. This is so fascinating. I wonder what's going to happen next.
And the Seahawks they don't ever have just a quiet offseason, do they? Everything is always interesting. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. And you're right. Maybe they will come out in a couple of days and say, yep, we're not trading Russ. Like, let's just get this out of the way. Like, not happening. Or maybe in a couple of days we'll find out Russ has made an official request to be traded, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think we've probably gone through it all now. So we'll wrap things up. But I do think that it wouldn't take much, does it? I mean, there's been so many reports and so many sources cited. It wouldn't take much, would it, just to give old Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter a quick bell, or JLC, and say he's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. I can tell you now. You can quote me on this. He is not going anywhere. That hasn't happened. The only sort of response we've heard from the Seahawks so far is when Dan Patrick went on his show last night or yesterday morning. It's hard to know what time it is in America when I'm sort of 5 or 8 hours ahead of you guys. Went on his show and said that he cited a source that said the Seahawks management are not happy. That's the only response we've seen so far. Don't forget what number one rule is on Pete's. I can't remember what it's called now. His all in book that he wrote that I did read when he arrived. Actually, it's quite nice if every head coach could write a book for when they take over the team, so that the fans could just get an idea for what they're all about. It'd be really helpful, actually. But anyway, yeah, protect the team. And Russell's doing the opposite of protecting the team right now. So it's a Rule 1 violation. So what is going to happen here? What is going to happen? What are the consequences of this? There has to be some. I'm fascinated. I'll tell you one last thing. One final thought to end on, Robbie. Someone at who works with the Seahawks media team is having too much fun at the moment, because if you look at the Seahawks Twitter account, practically everything they tweet is a positive thing about Russell Wilson. So in the last sort of 10 minutes, they've had Joe McHale tweeting out his well done on winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And then yesterday it was We've put up a huge banner outside CenturyLink or Lumen Field, and it's Russell Wilson's face saying congratulations. And did you see that Russell Wilson was in GQ today with Sierra? And here's some pictures of them. Oh, look who's been speaking to this. And Russell Wilson says this. And here's a breakdown of Russell Wilson's top 10 throws from 2020. It's like everything is like really positive about Russell Wilson. Someone is like having the time of their life. And I guarantee that they are laughing their head off every time they hit the send button. Because while all this is going on, the team's Twitter account is just acting like, no, nothing's going on here. No, just here's another Russell Wilson tweet. Isn't he great? Russell, yay, go Russ. By the way, that GQ stuff, oh my God, Russ. You know, when is he? You know what, there's the one thing, I'll just say this, Robbie, to end on. If Russell Wilson does go, please just draft a quarterback who doesn't want to have a perfume and a photo shoot. Just draft a Philip Rivers type guy who just has 10 kids. And you know, here and he wears a bolo tie or whatever it's called. Don't just draft somebody like that. I can live without the GQ and the eat the ball and the nano bubbles and the perfume that smells of my love for Sierra. I can live without all of that. Let's just not have that anymore, please.
Yeah, I could do without that.
Oh, well, I don't know about you, but I need to lie down after that podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Despite, and look, if you have got angry comments to me and you want to tell me that this is all no news and a load of nonsense and that we're just trying to click, I love the fact that the accusation of clickbait, like we don't advertise anything. Why would we want to clickbait anything? You know, we don't make any money out of this. It's free. So there's no reason to clickbait. We're just having a chat. We're just having a conversation, like a couple of guys down in a pub in England when you used to be able to go in the pub. And just shooting the you know what, and that's it, and that's all we're talking about. And if you disagree, that's allowed, but don't just shout silly things like you don't know, Russell's going nowhere, you're an idiot. That's not productive. There's too much of that. Anyway, for more analysis, head over to the blog. There's so many interviews on the channel at the moment. I really wish that more people would check out the draft series interviews with the prospects that I do. You enjoy me and Robbie ranting, but you know, I'd love you to check more of those out because there's some great guys. David Moore was great. Quinn Miners was great. The defensive lineman we do were great. I'm doing one with Dante Smith later today, so that'll be on the blog very soon. And he is a real rising prospect, really big. You could even sneak in the second round. Could even be a Seahawks pick. So you won't want to miss that. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. Until next time, until the latest updates on the Russell Wilson saga, we'll see you soon.